everyone. Welcome to the Entrepreneur live stream, which we do every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I always have to remember it's 1 p.m. Eastern, even though I'm in Atlantic Standard Time. Anytime we move forward, or the clocks move forward in the United States, I tend to get very confused. Or when they move backwards, I get confused. I'm just a confused person. Anyhow, I'm your host, Jillian Sidoti, and I'm the host today. Nate Dodson will be joining us next week. But forget about that. Forget about that other guy. Let's talk about today's guest. Today's guest spent more time in discipline than in the classroom as a kid. I was the opposite, but he went to detention a lot, and it turns out he was just really efficient at finishing assignments and got bored waiting. Okay, I didn't do that. Now he's a strategic expert in business operations and efficiency, helping entrepreneurs and business owners create real freedom through clear systems. With over 20 years of experience running and scaling business in home services, retail, and logistics, he specializes in streamlining operations, optimizing workflows, and building systems that unlock growth. And I think we can all agree we all want to grow, because if you're not growing, you're dying. So let's get ready for actionable insights on working smarter, not always harder. Welcome to the show, David Forster. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sounds fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, I think this is like such an important thing. I live in an area here in Puerto Rico. There's tons of small businesses, and I can't tell you how many times I walk into a business and you can just immediately tell like they are not efficient. And you can't, as an outsider looking in, you can't always tell what the inner workings are. So what would you say the biggest inefficiencies are that hold businesses back from scaling? And how would someone like you help them through these bottlenecks?
Yeah, it's the thing that I hated the most in the beginning as well. Like I'm a super fast-paced, like highly autonomous. I'm just a driven, fast-paced guy, right? So slowing down to document anything just sounded like I wanted to pull my teeth out, right? I didn't want to slow down to do anything. So that's the biggest thing that we see. I mean, it's a lack of documented processes leaves everything on the table for question, right? There's no clear direction for anybody on the team or any of that. And so a lot of us, especially in home services, but I think in any entrepreneurial venture, is a lot of great technicians that had that itch and they went and did their thing and they know how to do it really well. And then that turns into, verbal training, on the job training, all that stuff, but never really slowed down to put those things in place. To hold accountability to. There's nothing you can point at. It's just, well, you said, and that's left open to interpretation. How did they take it? So that's the biggest thing that we see.
It's interesting you say home services in particular, because one of the things I've encouraged, I have 3 boys, 2 of them are teenagers, so they're going to be either going to college soon or going into the workforce. The world is, I went to college and I have an advanced degree, but the world is very different now, and we need those home services more than ever, right? Especially
Yeah.
because those shop classes and things like that are not in schools as much as they used to be. So, I'm constantly telling my kids, learn how to be an electrician, learn how to be a plumber, and be the best one there is.
Yeah.
Um, but keeping that in mind, and just going back to what you said about like documenting things, um, what is in today's day and age, with all the technology out there and people's lack of attention span, what is the best way to document these things? Do you have a manual? Do you have a series of videos? What do you suggest for any business, but especially those home service businesses?
Yeah. I say keep it simple. I mean, there's so many ways you can, and we can get really overwhelmed with thinking that we need all of these new AI supported dashboards and all these things that you can dive into. So whatever works for you. If you are a more tech savvy person you want to use, there's multiple ways to record your screen while you're making operations thing. If it's something on the computer, or set your iPhone up and do the thing, right? And just record yourself doing the thing, whether it's inspecting a garage door or installing or planting a tree or installing a retaining wall. Put your phone up there, record it, and you can obviously go into editing and speed up sections of it or cut out sections of it, make it whatever it needs to be at the end. But now you've got a training video, you've got something you can point at that was exactly what you needed. It was done by you exactly how you would do it. Those are with the technology we have, is the easy ways to jump on it.
So, okay, that's such great advice, but okay, so if you're telling somebody how to build a retaining wall, so you make a video, then where do you house that? Do you do it on YouTube and make them private? Do you have and just tell your employees, "Hey, this is where you go to get any help you might need or support you might need while you're out on a job?" Is this just reduced to how to do a job, or do you put efficiencies in place for all parts of the business? For example, taking in phone calls and doing and arriving, arriving at someone's home, how do you behave there?
Yeah, you can go as deep with it as you want to. As far as the platform, if you're familiar with YouTube, put it there. If you're familiar with Vimeo, put it there. If you just want to put it in a Google Drive that all of your people can access and look at from their device or whatever on the job or wherever they're at, wherever you can store it, that's easy. There's, like I said, there's a couple of, you can get more tech savvy and really dive into it, but just keep it really simple. Don't spend money if you don't have to on something that you don't know how to use. If you're not efficient using it, don't necessarily dive in and think you have to develop this whole nother side skill, especially as a leader. Your plate's full. Don't try to go learn something new. And don't necessarily just jump into hiring somebody. Well, now we need a media person to do all this stuff. It's like, hold on a second, pump the brakes. Let's get it going, and then we can fine tune it as we go.
Oh, great
Yeah.
point. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you can dive in if you want to. If answering the phone has some etiquette to it and a specific way of doing it, yeah, shoot a short little video that's easy to just point at a weekly training or something and say, hey guys, here's just a reminder. Let's watch this video real quick on how we answer the phone around here. If it's a certain amount of energy or whatever.
You're talking about, like the way we're describing this, way we're talking about this right now, and a lot of people who watch this channel, they are solopreneurs, or maybe there's one or two partners, and that's kind of how we're discussing this now. We're talking about a guy who is a mason or a carpenter or something like that,
Yeah.
or maybe an appliance. What we really need here in Puerto Rico is appliance repair people. So if you're a good appliance repair person and you need work, I have the place for you to do it. But say you're one of these people, and you're saying like, okay, we're making this assumption that the owner's going out doing these jobs and then recording themselves doing their jobs so they can scale and grow and bring on more people. But to me, people that traps people. People get trapped into the daily grind of their business. So how do you get that person who's making those videos and doing those things and going out and doing all the work? How do you help them shift from an operator to a leader and really find freedom in their business instead of just their business being another job?
Yeah. Well, let's just start with being brutally honest. It's a control issue most of the time, and we all have it, right? That's why we're entrepreneurs. We want to control our time and control our life, and we want freedom, which is do whatever I want, whenever I want, right? That's recognizing that is the first phase, really, and letting go the control of certain tasks. I like to say 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome, right? So if you have to edit a little bit of something here and there, or do some coaching now and then to get something directed properly, that's fantastic. That's the minimal amount of stuff you have to do. But delegating those things so that somebody else on your team has a clear understanding of how to do them is the key to growth. You need to build a team of leaders, right? So that they can then continue to lead more people on the team. And if you don't document these things, it's just the delegation is so hard to hold consistency and accountability to. So it's a step-by-step process. And you can have, if you already have a few people on your team and you have a technician that does some of those things, record them doing it. And that then brings even more respect and a little bit of energy to that technician, and some of the other technicians, the new guys are going to look up to that guy. And then all of a sudden, boom, now you've got a level of separation where you can point to a leader and say, well, he's the guy in the video. You should ask him.
I want to step away from the efficiency part of it for a second, because I know, on this channel, a lot of people are looking for the next opportunity, and we deal a lot with real estate entrepreneurs who are always looking for those businesses that can supplement or complement their real estate business. What are you finding right now, and particularly in the home services area, that is like a really popular niche to get into if someone were to go and start a home services business?
Yeah, I mean, the landscaping world has always been, I don't think it'll ever go away as kind of
Oh, interesting. Okay.
easy side. When I was in that industry for 20 plus years, and it was a joke that, any guy with a push mower and a truck now was a landscaper. And it's like, oh, it's not true. But it kind of is. I mean, if you can deliver consistent quality and your customer is happy, you have a business, right? So if it's whatever you have another skill set in, if it's, could be painting, could be lawn care, could be, I mean, there's those things tend to be, you could correlate real estate also with school teachers. A lot of school teachers in the summertime, when they're not teaching, will pick up one of these home service things that they know how to do well and can make some good income in the summertime for a few months. So
interesting. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So no, and I will tell you this, like, I know, the thing to do, especially when we were kids, is like, as a teenager, is to go around and take your dad's lawnmower and ask your neighbors, can I mow your lawn? But I will tell you firsthand, as someone who has a husband who's obsessed with lawn care and the yard and the way it appears, and not all landscapers are created equal. And the landscaper who shows up regularly is the best landscaper there is.
This is absolutely
the
true.
one who's consistent.
Yep.
Consistency will rule the day. So okay, that's great. So, like, let's just say you have a business that's already in the flow, is making money, is chaos. I see this all the time, right? I will use my AC guy as an example. We're here in Puerto Rico, so AC guys are high in demand, right?
Yeah.
And I have a regular AC guy. And by regular, I mean, sometimes when I tell him I have a problem, he might show up, right? So he's very popular because he's good at his job, but I'm this close to finding a new AC guy, because he'll tell me he's going to be there in 20 minutes, and 20 minutes is 2 days later. So let's just say you have a business like this.
Yep.
And I know this guy, he's not watching this program, trust me. So there's no risk. But I know this guy. I've gotten to know him. He's, like I said, they're good at their job. When they do come in, they solve the problem, no problem. But it's a matter of showing up. I know that he just had a baby. He's got a crew of guys. How does he fix these issues that he has? How does he, like, when we started this conversation, we kind of started it off as like, hey, if you're going to start your business, start off on the right hook to make sure you have the systems in place and you're efficient and you keep it simple. But let's talk about that guy who's already got the business in place and is already in a chaotic situation. How do they course correct?
Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's, yeah, like you said, it's extremely common. I mean, that's usually we see that, or I see that in like the, probably in the 500 to 1,000 to 1,000,000 revenue is where it's really common. To get past some really high performing, driven entrepreneurs can just beat their way to 1,000,000 with really nothing in place other than energy and charisma, right? They're a really good technician. They brought on some people, they taught them the right things, and then boom, it's just like, hey guys, let's go. And you hit that ceiling or the pain line where it's like, now what? And to get past that is when you're going to have to slow down, which is painful and makes you want to throw up, and document these things. It has to be done at some point. If you're gone, if you have a baby and you need to take some time off, that happened to me a couple of years ago. And Thankfully, we had checklists and SOPs and things in place for our business that I knew that I could trust my team to do what they knew how to do. And if they had a question, there was something for them to go to if I wasn't immediately available.
Okay, so SOPs, standard operating procedures.
Yep.
And when you were doing this and when you're telling people, hey, you got to start putting your standard operating procedures in place, where do you start? Do you start with the actual providing of the service, or do you start with something else?
I start as high level as we can, and just start putting something in place if there's nothing there. A lot of times there's stuff, there's systems there, and even sometimes they've been written down. They're just not used, right? They're not pointed at, they're not trained on, they're not consistently held accountability to. And so if you don't use them, you train people not to use them, right? So when you try to bring them in, there's a little bit of resistance, but it's just a matter of starting with the high level things that are crucial to the business. So what is your sales process? What is your delivery process? And what is your admin, like back end process, to make sure all that happens? Everything's handed off from team member to team member from beginning to end of that service.
Okay, so what are you saying? You're saying you look at all the broad categories of the business and you start from the top down?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you could start bottom up, but then you have somebody that knows how to, if you're a landscape company and the one thing you have documented is how to plant an annual flower. Like, well, great. Now what? But
and then
but if you know how to do scheduling, you can at least get to the jobs, right? And everybody knows where to go and when to go, and the customers at least have somebody there, right? So hopefully you haven't hired people that completely don't know what they're doing, and the training is there in place.
I don't know. What is this thing? Is it a rake or a hoe?
Right. So starting with the things that have to be done, and then you can start kind of fine tuning in those categories of adding more in there. But you still have to be careful. And we also see people that if you're a highly detailed person, you can go too far. And next thing you know, you have an SOP on how to go to the bathroom. And it's like, okay, well, we might have gone too far here. So.
Although, if you think about it, that's actually having an SOP on how to go to the bathroom in a guest's home or a customer's home actually might be something
that, yes,
as a service person you want to consider,
Like,
I mean, you want to tell you, I mean, it's common sense, right? But if you're working with people who might not have a lot of common sense some of the time,
yeah,
you at least mention it to them. So, all right. So those companies, you're seeing those struggles with those companies between 500 and $1 million, where they're getting overwhelmed, and that's really where we're seeing the struggles. But let's talk about that next level, the $1 to $5 million businesses.
Yep.
What common patterns do you see in those kinds of companies that actually succeed versus those that sputter out and die or succumb to their own lack of efficiency?
Yeah. I would say the ones that kind of sputter out and die or stagnate and just kind of sit there. And you see a lot of owner operator businesses in that level. And they talk about, it's so hard to find help, and there's just no good help out there, and all the excuses around the workforce and blah, blah, blah. And here they are with this, they're the main technician or the main leader, and there's just this turnover going on. Right. And you can't scale and you can't grow if you can't keep somebody to then promote into a position of leadership. So a lot of times what we see in that is what we would call transactional management. So it's tell them what to do, check that it got done, and tell them what to do next. And that's pretty common all over the place.
And you don't want that transactional management. You want to create leaders within the company.
Right. What we would call transformational leadership. So you don't just tell them what to do, you explain what the result needs to look like, right? And then you put some KPIs or some measurements in place that you can make sure that those things are getting done. You measure those things, hold some accountability to them, And then if some coaching needs to happen because something's not quite going right, you don't just tell them how to do it. You coach them around the mindset so that maybe this scenario, maybe this way, but that mindset can help on 10 different scenarios.
Okay, okay, this is the good stuff right here. Let's role play this, because I think it doesn't matter if you're in a home services business, retail, real
Right.
estate, restaurant, whatever. This is the gold right here, because this is a big complaint. If you spend enough time on the internet, you'll see that there's two things can be true at the same time. There's no jobs and nobody wants to work. Right?
Yep.
So just depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
So let's talk about getting those employees in, making them leaders in their own right, and keeping them there for a good long time. And it sounds like to me, based on what you're saying, is it goes beyond compensation. Compensation's obviously important, but it goes beyond that. It's about giving them a leadership role, no matter how small it is.
Yeah. I mean, and owning their role for sure. Yep. Whether
Okay.
it's leading themselves only or if it's leading other people on the team.
Okay. So now you said something that was like, really, you don't give direction, check, give more direction. You give direction, tell them what you want the result to be, and then let them know how you're going to measure that, and then actually measure it.
Yep.
So give me, let's go back to landscaping. Give me, I am your landscaping protege, and you're sending me out on to go, you know, mow or take care of Mrs. McNeely's yard. How are you sending me out there? What's happening?
Yeah. So let's say we're sending out and your route today has 15 stops, right?
Oh my God. And I'm landscaping? I'm
Yeah.
going to be exhausted.
If we're mowing, right? If we're mowing residential yards and they're not large estate lots, they're just normal residential yards. You have 15 stops to make today. And we're expecting that, there's no damages and we're done by this time. And we're going to average, that means we're going to average around this time per lawn. That's what we're going to measure. So if I see that you're on yard number 8 by this time, that's you're on track or you're not, type of thing. Or hey, you may be rushing a little bit. Hey, take your time, make sure we're not getting any damages, we're not leaving any wheel marks, and we want to make sure that we leave a door hanger on each house left and right this week when we make our stops.
Okay.
That may be this week's direction of like how that lawn crew is going to operate.
Okay. 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 That's interesting. So you're almost giving them a step-by-step approach. You need to arrive at the job site at this time. It should take you no more than X amount of, it should take you no more than an hour to service this lawn. But before you leave, you are to leave a door, like you almost give them a checklist.
You can, yeah. And I'd try not to make it so like detailed and like micromanaged on it. Giving them just the big picture of like, hey, if there's 15 yards today, my measurement is your average time per lawn. So I know like, okay, if there's 15, you should be halfway through by this time. So I might see that,
Okay.
hey, you guys didn't get back today until 6 p.m. You should have been here by 3. What was going on? Like, then I know that that's a measurement I can use to then do some coaching. It's
Okay.
like, oh, well, I don't know, man. We can't go any faster. It's like, okay, well, let's look at how did you load and unload the truck? Where did you park? How did you do that? Like making sure that there's not some silly operational thing that's causing them to drag a bunch of time.
But they say Mrs. McNeely is a lonely old lady and she invited us in for some lemonade and we felt obligated. Is that okay?
That can be. If it's
Okay.
every week, we might have to start talking to Mrs. McNeely about like, maybe we have a community person that comes out every now and then to have tea with her. We'll find her somebody to have tea with.
If you're just joining us, our guest today is David Forster. I'm going to put his name up there so you guys can see. David, where can people find you on the internet if they need to make their business more efficient?
Yeah, best places right now, LinkedIn and Facebook. Just look me up, David Forster. And you can email me if you want at df@dfscales.com.
DF, I'm going to put that up there right now. Oh,
Yep.
excuse me. I'm going to type df@dfscales.com. I'll put that up there. All right, there you go. So awesome. So, okay. All right. I like how this is going because it's like you have a big picture idea. You're not micromanaging, but you're telling everybody, look, this is what we're looking at. You have 15 houses today, and you're giving them some freedom there to make choices at the same time. You're not putting them in this like rule book
Yep.
where they can't make individual choices. I love that. You're giving them some kind of autonomy.
Yep. And I think
Yeah.
most of us as entrepreneurs, if we were locked into a box of how everything had to be done, we would resist that and leave, right? That's what most of us did.
Mm-mm.
And if you think about what you really want out of something, you don't really want that everything gets done like this. You just want the result, right? And you want the customer to be satisfied with excellence, not just, oh, this was okay, but you want excellence in it. You want the customer to receive what you promised and then some. And you want that result there where everybody has a win-win. And if you start getting, too boxed in on micromanaged, there are certain tasks that need 100% direction, and you can put that into some training and a training manual. That's how you can, onboard and bring on some new people with some very specific things. Once that stuff's trained, though, it's kind of like, hey, we know this stuff. Let's just go win.
Okay, okay, okay. So I like that actually that helps almost answer my next question. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs like me who are constantly go, 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 and they bring somebody on, make the mistake of not training enough, right? Like I very early on in my career, or in my businesses, I would bring people in and then I would say, okay, just figure it out. I'll see, good luck. And obviously that doesn't help you or your business either. So what you're suggesting is you gotta train on the essentials, but don't micromanage. Like if they're in a restaurant, they have to know the menu, they have to know how to put an order in, they have to know how to deliver it, but you don't necessarily have to tell them and make sure you smile and you greet the customers and or do
Yeah.
you?
That's stuff that you can filter through your culture, right? That's not
Okay.
something if you have to train that stuff, you probably just need to
You're
look a
probably
little.
hiring the wrong person, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If they don't want to smile and greet the customer, they probably shouldn't be working in a restaurant. That's just the way it needs to be, right? Or almost any business. Any business, really, you could be considered a hospitality business these days. And so, training on the essentials. Yep. And but then if you feel like you continually have to, like, hey, make sure you follow this checklist when you do this, you that means you don't trust that person to actually do what you hired them to do, and you're probably seeing something that you don't like, and that's where you really need to sit down and, am I a control freak, or does this person really not fit the role, and we need to have a
So
different
let's
discussion.
talk about that for a second. If this person doesn't really fit the role, like how many chances do you give somebody? And how do you measure? We talked about KPIs. How do you measure that, and how often do you measure that?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest areas to tackle. I mean, you hear some people say that if you've thought about firing them, you need to fire them, because that means you've already lost the that level of respect and everything there, and now you're going to start making excuses. I think.
Listen, I'm the worst at firing people. I once kept an employee for 5 years longer than I should have. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
probably asking this advice for me more than anybody
Yeah.
else.
It's the most painful thing, right? It's the most painful
Yeah.
thing, all of it to do. Like, risk for entrepreneurs is like, cool, give me risk. I'll just go jump off a cliff. But then, like, oh, I got to fire somebody. It's like, oh, can somebody else do this? Can I be sick today?
Yeah.
So it's painful.
Yeah. It's painful, but I'll tell you, um, I learned from my co-host Nate. We switch off on sometimes we do this program together, but my co-host Nate is amazing at firing people. He'll fire people like that and not feel bad about it at all. And his point is he's like, I'm not just doing myself a favor, I'm doing them a favor, because
Yep.
they obviously don't want to be here, or this isn't a good fit for them.
Right.
I'm just prolonging the damage or the
Yeah.
pain or the suffering by keeping them
Yeah.
around. So yeah.
And that's the key way to look at it. The timing of it, everybody's going to have a
There's
slightly
never good timing. They'll always have an excuse. It was my birthday last week. It's Christmas next week. It's the new year. It's the end of the year. Oh my God. My dog just died. There's all
yeah. And every team is going to have a different culture on how they approach that. And some teams are just, this is business is business, and this is what you were expected to do and you didn't do it. And so it's not personal, but we got to let you go. And
yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing for me to learn, especially because I had my brother worked for me for 12 years, again, and he worked for me for way too long. But I think the hardest thing for me to like wrap my head around and realize, and as a message I want to give to all of you out there, is that your employees are not your friends. They're your employees, and you might have friendly interactions with them, and you might have social occasions with them, and you might get close to them and get to know them really well, but they're not your friends. They're your employees until maybe someday they're not your employees, and then you can be friends. And I think that was a huge learning curve for me.
And that's a wavering like conversation all the time. It's kind of an ebb and flow of education, right? So at least while you're on the clock, but then being able to do an on the clock, off the clock thing is a very unique emotional stability to be able to, if you can be friends off the clock and then click into like work gear, business gear, and not like, hey, this is our expectation. And it's very rare to have that ability. So yes, most of the time it's going to be a, hey, if I just wanted you to be my friend, I wouldn't pay you like that. That sounds really weird. I don't want to do that.
Right. Well, and it's funny because like I have an old employee who used to work for me. She now works for Nate, and I'm friends with her now. But and we were friendly, and I cared about her, and I cared about her children, but I wouldn't say that we were friends. I'd say we're more friends now. And I was really careful with that relationship because I always wanted to make sure that she felt like she was getting compensated and she didn't have to be my friend in order to get compensated fairly. And also that the expectations of how we work together was really clear. So yeah, and I bet I mean, that can get really hard in a service business, especially where you're working side by side with somebody all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so look, so what do you tell business owners? And even I struggle with this from time to time. I've built a bunch of businesses. I've put systems in place. I still struggle with this. What do you tell business owners who think they just have to work harder to succeed? How do you challenge that mindset, and what's the smartest thing? I know we say work smarter, not harder, but what does that really mean?
No, you got me there on, like, you used my phrase, darn it. No, I'm just kidding. So just as a quick rewind, I also want to say I'm not like an HR professional. I am the operations like expert, and that involves a lot of things around people, but there are definitely like certain things that I'm like, that's an HR thing. Let's put that in.
No, that's fair. Like I also had an HR person because I've been violating laws all over the place.
If it comes to like about this part, working hard, doing the right things, efficiency, operations, I'm your guy. So yeah, when it comes to that, like work smart, not hard, I think what a lot of people want that to mean is like, do the fun stuff, and that's the smart stuff, and then let everybody else hire people to do the hard stuff. And that's, you have to look at it through a little bit different lens. And so I'm definitely not going to tell you to not work hard. Like, it's going to be harder than you ever thought it was going to be. And if you have big goals and big aspirations, like it's just not going to work if you're not going to work harder than you ever thought you were going to have to. And success, we've heard this before, success isn't a destination, it's a journey, right? You're not going to get to this magic point where like, cool, now my business runs without me and I don't have to do anything. It's like the bigger it gets, the bigger it gets. And it's just different, right? Stretch that rubber band and you're going to get more capacity. But I say the biggest thing around that is do the hard things. Like that's the hard work, and do them smart. So the hard things might be, a lot of times they're the things that you're avoiding. You're procrastinating doing it because it just makes you have anxiety and butterflies and you're scared to do it, or it just, I don't know, whether it's networking or, working on your leadership skills, whatever those things are, you tend to just kind of go back to the thing you're good at and stay there. And you're like, well, I'm just going to do more of that. And it's like, well, that's not how you grow a business, right? So figure out what those hard things are, work harder than you ever imagined on those things, and be as smart as you can around the rest of it. So like with today's world, anybody that has a growing organization should, I think, you should get a virtual assistant or an executive assistant of some type immediately. You can do it so easily at such a reasonable rate now. And if you're looking through your own emails and booking your own calendar and doing all that stuff, that's the first step. And we've got solutions for that we partner with people that have amazing ways of taking care of that stuff. And it's not like you need to be a $1 billion business owner. You don't take it as meaning like you're this big hoity-toity. Like there's some great ways to then focus your energy on the right things. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to put your email back up there because that's something people can really use. You guys, if you need those kinds of if you need that kind of advice of where to find, executive assistant or those tasks that you should not be doing, David can help with that. So just the email's on the screen. It's df@dfscales.com. All right. So, okay, let's talk about that for a second. When you're recommending that people hire, virtual assistants, and you don't have to tell us what service you use or anything like that. I don't want you to give away any trade secrets, but are you, I'm going to ask you a series of questions now. Are you suggesting onshore or offshore? Part-time or full-time? What do you do, like a 24 hours answering service or no? Like, tell me what you think about that.
Yeah. It depends on what, I think all of those are great options, right? Okay. I am one of the most patriotic guys you're ever going to meet. And I'm not going to tell you it has to be this, that, or the other, and US based and blah, blah, blah. I have a great friend who runs a VA service who many of theirs are in the Philippines, and they absolutely their culture loves the idea of working on, they call the graveyard shift, or we would call the graveyard shift, because they can flip-flop their day and spend more time with their kids. And while their kids are sleeping, they do their work. And while their kids are at school, they sleep. So it's just different, right? But it works with our hours. And so if you need an answering service, they can do that. Part-time, full-time, in-house, virtual. We have options that I know that are wives of military, so of the U.S. military. So since they're moving around all the time and schedules are different, this is something that works for them, and they're great. They're very professional. They're experienced. It just depends on what you need, what you want, what rate you can afford. There's all kinds of options. So.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So it's really about what's the best fit for you and your company.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know. And then
like a checklist box, be like, fill out this form and boom, this is what you get. But not yet.
So, no, but I mean, it's analysis paralysis in this day and age, right? There's so many options out there that it's really nice. Like sometimes when somebody just tells you, no, this is what you do and this is how you do it. But I mean, I've done it all. I've had the virtual assistant that was in the United States. I've had the virtual assistant that was in Pakistan. I had one in the Philippines. And I'll definitely tell you, there's things you got to look for. I would say when you first, if you are going to go that route of getting somebody who's from a foreign country to be your assistant, that is not native English speaking, this is my own experience. You do have to spend some time um, micromanaging, and
Okay.
then letting them go. My Filipino virtual assistant was one of the most reliable people I've ever met in my life. You couldn't get anybody more reliable. But I also knew that I had to, in the beginning, give her real guidance and direction on what it was that my expectations were, because she's not here. She doesn't know American culture as well as an American, and she didn't know my business as well as an American would. So
Yeah.
it was important to make sure that she got that support she needed in order to be
Yeah.
successful. So that's
Yeah.
just something.
My recommendation around that as well is because it's becoming more common. The sources that we use vet everybody, and so it's I don't have to go out and go try to find a VA somewhere, right? I can just go to Scott and I say, Scott, this is what we need. This is the skill set we need. This is this. This is this. This is the timing. This is how many hours a week, whatever it might be. And he says, yep, or I know my team. We can search that out. We can find somebody that fits that has that availability, that does this. He did it for me last week, and it's just a great experience to have a trusted source that will look for all those things, and their business and their responsibility is to do all that stuff. So you don't have to then add that to your plate. So
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, from an efficiency and systems and your SOPs point of view. Let's just say that you're starting your business, you're getting busier. I have this happening to me right now in one of my businesses, um, where I'm getting a little busier and I really could use an assistant. Should I be writing down my SOPs now to provide to that assistant, or should I work my SOPs around that assistant? Like, should I see what works first and then put my SOPs together?
yeah, I love this question because I have 20 plus years of running businesses. I've beat my head against the wall. I'm a really nice guy, right? It's like, well, don't mistake my kindness for weakness kind of thing though. Like, but I have tried that route of, hey, this is how I think we should do this. I've designed this, it should work, it's efficient, blah blah, let's do it. And then it doesn't quite work, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should do it. If you guys like it this way, what do you think about doing it this way? Maybe this would fit you better. And then 3 weeks later, that guy quits, and you're like, what? What just happened? I just built this system for you, and then you quit. Like, oh, thanks a lot. So
Uh,
after doing that so many times over the years, and still, it's either they quit or that one doesn't work either, and now you got to design another one, and then you just start flipping through systems so fast that they just give up trying to learn, right? So, just design the SOP around what you want.
what you want? No, yeah. I mean,
Like
it's
how you
so
want.
funny that yeah, like I lived that experience so many times, and especially when I had some employees who'd been with me for a long time, and they got kind of grumpy. They would get grumpy with me because they'd been with me for so long, so they felt like they could do that, right? So, I would tell them, this is what I want, this is how I want it, and they would give me excuses as to why it wouldn't work that way, and I listened until I would come back, like, a year later and say, "Remember how I said I wanted it this way?" I
Yeah,
I used to have this thing I called it my special chart, right? And
yeah,
I waved this thing around for 4 years. I had drawn on a whiteboard in my office exactly how I wanted the business to work, like the whole system, like a chart. And I took a picture of it, and we left it on that whiteboard for so long. We actually, when we went to erase the whiteboard, we never could completely erased it because the marks were indented in there. But it didn't matter that they eventually erased the whiteboard and tried to write something else over it, because I took a picture of it. And
yeah,
anytime somebody asked me a question about like how something should be done, I'd simply email a picture of the chart
yeah,
until I got what I wanted. And it
yeah.
took like 4 years of me to get the business to work that way.
Okay.
Um, but I stuck to my guns and
Yep.
got it. Eventually I got it there.
Yeah.
But it did take some time. But we talked about this earlier, and we'll wrap up here on this subject. But we talked about this earlier, and we started off with, hey, things have got to be simple to start. And at one of the experiences in one of my businesses, I worked with two guys who worked in billion-dollar companies at one point in time, and one of them was a medical doctor, and they both, when we went to go put systems into our business, I was all ready and gun ho to start using like these fancy project management systems and things like that. And they're like, no, 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 no. We use Word and Excel until we know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then we transfer everything over into a system that works based on what we know from the Word and Excel documents. And we might not get there for a year.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's good. I want to encourage everybody to do that. But the world is rapidly changing. And especially for home services businesses, if I wake up in the middle of the night with a leak in my house and I need to call a plumber, I want to be able to reach somebody on WhatsApp. What do you like? I want to be able to reach somebody on WhatsApp and be like, "Hey, help me. My whole house is exploding." What do you recommend for these businesses to do to take do you recommend that they get on those systems, the WhatsApps, the Facebook Messengers, the Google Chats? And if so, do you have a recommendation of how they do that and handle that kind of part of their operations?
I recommend it if that's what they want to do. I'm a big proponent of build your business the way you want to.
Okay.
And build a business that you're not going to grow to hate, right?
Okay.
So if WhatsApp is easy for you to use, or somebody on your team that's responsible for that, if that's the easiest way, whatever you're going to give quick response to the customer, do it.
Okay.
If you're not, don't even toy with it. Like if you're
okay.
if you're going to jump on WhatsApp, but you're only going to respond, 30% of the time within 3 days, like those customers you're going to lose them no matter what. And you're going to have a bad taste in their mouth if they ever find you later, because they're, that guy never responds. Well, it's because we just don't use that platform very well.
Yeah.
Similar to the social media world, the big recommendation is to pick the one you're going to do really well with and just do that one. Don't try to do all of them kind of good. Just do, or kind of well. Do the one that you're going to do really well and stick with it. Do it really well.
I do MySpace really well. Do you?
Hey, as soon as Facebook will let us have like a theme song in the background, then we got it nailed.
Or you could have like glitter falling.
Yeah.
You could customize your profile page. Who wouldn't love that? All right, everybody. I just want to remind you, my guest today is David Forster, and you can reach him at df at dfscales.com. We are going to wrap up here soon, but if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. I'll get them no matter where you're watching this, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. And just as a reminder, we are on YouTube. We do this live stream every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I'd be remiss not to say at noon Central, because Nate is in Central Time and he insists I say Central Time. So we do it at 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central every Tuesday. We have a different guest, and today we're talking all about business efficiencies. So if you're just tuning in, you can ask your question in the comments below. But David, before we wrap up, what is the number one aha moment, big idea you would give to an entrepreneur these days?
Can I give you two?
Oh, please.
Okay.
Even better. 2 for the price of 1. All right.
One of the things that it changed the direction of everything that I was doing, and the momentum behind it was when I realized I kind of put down the young guy doing a new business thing of like all of the selfish rewards that would come with it, house, cars, money, freedom, do whatever I want, travel to the tropics and just live this whatever. I'm going to be a billionaire. All these things you think as a young entrepreneur when you're first starting, right? And really sit down and what is the purpose? Like, what do you really want? Right. And I would say for me, it really kicked in when I had our daughter. We have a 2-year-old now, and when she was born, like we didn't know we could. So when we did, I had already set my sights on the rest of life without, right? So it's just like, okay, this is my purpose. We're building community. We're doing these things, blah, blah, blah. So find your purpose. And once you've locked in on that and you have a clear purpose, like everything else is going to fall into place. That's the first one. And if you need to take a full day of like going to the park somewhere and no music, no nothing, just sit there in silence to figure that out. And maybe it takes multiple days. I don't know. It took me a minute until she was, when she was born, that was different, but it takes time to really work through that stuff. But that's the important stuff. As a leader, you need to know the purpose of what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, everything transcends your own selfish stuff. And it's about building a team. You realize how much farther you can go as a team, and you just start making impact. And then it's just like, you can't quench that fire.
That's awesome.
The second one is just a little more fun. I love this quote. I'm going to pull it up here. If you want to be rich, be lazy. If you want to be wealthy, be incompetent. And it sounds like totally counterintuitive, right? But it's like if you own a restaurant and the chef quits, you're not going to run in the kitchen and start cooking, right? So especially in the trades where I spend a lot of my time with home service businesses, there were technicians that we did really well with the technical side. So we started a business and we started building a team. So if somebody is sick or quits, we're the best guy to fill that because nobody else can do it better than me. So I'll go fill that spot. And then you just set yourself up for sabotage of your business going backward. So the problem to solve is who do I hire, not how do I get it done? So it's a little bit of the who, not how mindset. But I love that. If you want to be rich, be lazy. If you want to be wealthy, be incompetent.
Okay, that is awesome. And we're going to end on that. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest was David Forster, and you can reach him at DF Scales, and he will make your company efficient and with purpose. So I love that so much. Thank you, David, so much. We'll see you guys next week. I mean it.